Yo, 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 welcome back to the Wrestling Strength Podcast. As always, I am your host, Coach Myers. I'm your coach, I'm your host. I do both, right? And the Wrestling Strength Podcast is brought to you by Max Effort Muscle. Make sure you go to maxeffortmuscle.com for all your supplement needs. It's the only supplement brand that I trust with my athletes. I just happen to be a partner in the company. And also, the Wrestling Strength Podcast is brought to you by Ice Barrel. Ice Barrel is a cold therapy training tool that makes it simple and easy to bring ice baths to your routine. Now, if you've been following along on Instagram, I've been using cold contrast therapy with my sauna for the better part of the past year. Did it this morning, feel amazing. And typically the way that my athletes do it, we'll get in the sauna first, get a good sweat. Then we'll get into the ice, in the ice barrel, up to our neck for 3 to 5 minutes. Practice our breathing exercises. You get out, you have almost a little kind of euphoria feeling from it. And I like to think it's, not just the dopamine and the chemical reactions happening in your body. I think it's the stress leaving your body. You just feel amazing after you're done. The level of inflammation in my body is so much lower now that I've been using Ice Barrel. I'm going to sleep like a baby tonight. Maybe not like my babies. My babies weren't good sleepers, but babies that were good sleepers, that's how I'm going to sleep tonight. And I think that anyone, especially athletes or anyone that's training at a high level, can definitely benefit from using an ice barrel for cold exposure therapy. They're durable, they're compact, they're portable, they're lightweight. They're made in the USA right here in Ohio from 100% recycled materials. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and they also offer financing. With its sleek design and compact footprint, Ice Barrel makes it easy to experience the benefits of cold therapy from the convenience of your home. And Ice Barrel is giving you, the Wrestling Strength Podcast listeners, $125 off when you go to icebarrel.com/gutcheck, or let's just make it easy for you. When you go to icebarrel.com, when you order your Ice Barrel, you can just use code GUTCHECK. That's GUTCHECK. Use that at checkout. You'll get $125 off. You'll get that Ice Barrel delivered right to you, and you can start getting cold. You can get colder and feel better and get started with it right away. All right. Now that we paid the bills, I got to introduce my guest. I'm super excited to have him on the Wrestling Strength Podcast. The guy's had a huge impact on me as a friend and as a peer and as a mentor. My man, Ohio State wrestling head coach, Tom Ryan.
Hey, Dustin, good to be with you, man.
Yeah, man. It's been a great morning so far, right?
Great morning. Ice Barrel, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's I feel like it's been life-changing.
Yeah.
Adding the ice barrel and the sauna into my routine. Like I said, if I didn't have to come to work every day, I'd probably be in it every morning, every afternoon,
Yeah, well, I know the science behind it's real. It works. It works. So the recovery aspect of it is real. So
it's nice too, because there's a lot of recovery modalities. You do it, and even if there is science behind it, you wonder, like, is this helping or not?
Sure.
Because you can't feel like a noticeable, tangible difference right away. It's not like that with the cold exposure. You feel different immediately.
No, yeah, for sure. So.
Yeah. So this is the first time we've got to hang out in a while. So talk to me about what's been going on. I mean, I get to see, kind of through Instagram or whatever. I see you're a grandfather now. You're at that stage of life.
So many great things going on right now. Yeah. Obviously, my second son, having a son, it's superseded the expectations of grandfatherhood. I've heard it would be great, but seeing your son have a kid, is pretty cool, and the kid's really cool too. So it's been a lot of fun. My wife and I are having a ball with Rhett. Just turned 10 months old. Was born December 5th of 21. So we're loving that, and just had wrestle offs, and so every kind of railroad track in life has got something good on it right now, which is nice.
So I first met you, I think maybe 10, 11 years ago when I first came down the RTC as a volunteer, and I would say your career was in the same place it is now, but in a different spot. You were younger. Jake, who you just mentioned, had his first child, was in high school still. He was a high school wrestler coming up through the ranks. And, Ohio State was established as a program, but you were still building towards something great. And obviously you achieved so many great things. The first national title as a team, all those Big Ten titles, all these All-Americans, national champions. You were able to, build a new facility that is just amazing, a world-class facility for the team. And now, obviously that momentum has continued. You're a grandfather now. How do you think your mentality as a coach has changed? Because we talk a lot about once you achieve certain things, how do you not stay hungry for, that greatness that you work so hard to build.
Yeah. No, I mean, hunger is so critically important in our progress, but also, in the midst of the deep hunger that we have to do huge things, the challenge is when you have that wild hunger to make sure that your belief system is in place, which is, the things that ultimately matter, right? And of course, winning a national championship matters a ton. But in the midst of that hunger of getting the next big recruit, right? And winning more, I think for me, I've been very fortunate with a lot of great mentors to really just stay level in my I believes, right? The belief system, and making sure that every area of your life, none is ever neglected, right? There's no such thing as perfect balance, I don't think, in life. At certain seasons of life, you're going to be more focused on some things than others, but none should go unattended to. So right, the worst thing that can happen is you win multiple championships, and the things that mean the most fall apart, and that happens in life.
Oh yeah,
people, right?
You see it all the time at the highest level of
all
everything.
the time. It's like, yeah, you've won many championships, but how are your kids? How's your marriage, right? How are your relationships? So, wildly hungry still. I mean, I think Ohio State's done well. I think we want to continue to be. We want to be the best wrestling program in the world. I love the people side of it, right? I mean, I think the connections. And look, you were very involved, right, early on, because you knew someone, you trained someone that I had great trust for.
Yeah, Tommy.
You were training Tommy. And, Tommy Rollins was a guy in my staff when I first got here. I kept him on staff. And when you have people around you that you deeply trust, you trust the people that they trust. And he trusted you with his strength training. And, well, if he trusts you with his strength training, then I'm going to trust you with our guys' strength training. So, it's pretty unique the way this all worked out. And not abnormal, very normal way of progressing in life, right? You surround yourself with people that you trust. And I think, if I remember, we didn't pay you for a while either.
No, it was a couple years for sure. But
you remember better than me. But I know that.
Julie would probably know the exact
Julie
date.
would know, right? But you earned. It was like, wow, listen. I mean, there's a guy that came in and gave his time and his expertise, and he did it out of the pure love of really, helping, and that's rare. And it's why we're friends now, and why you're connected to a lot of the guys that wrestle Ohio State have trust in you, because you've earned it from the one that came before them. So they say, "Hey, trust this guy."
Right.
And then when they get alongside you, they see, well, hey,
I
he's
think
trustworthy. So.
I think when I first, when Tommy first introduced me to you guys down there, I mean, I was kind of starstruck walking in, because I'd been an Ohio State wrestling fan just from afar.
Sure.
And I thought, wow, to be in the room with, I'm in the wrestling room here, and Tom Ryan's over there running a practice, and there's Lou Roselli and, Reese Humphrey and all these guys that I've seen or whatever. And I can remember I recognized right away, I thought, okay, number one, this could be the greatest thing to ever happen for my career if I can somehow make an impact down here and help some of these athletes. That would be the way that could help my career from a perception standpoint from everyone else. But I also knew right away, when am I ever going to have a chance to be around such high-level individuals and learn from them? So I learned a ton from you even before you and I kind of worked out together, and I was in the coaching meetings and all these things. I was like, I just need to watch the way Tom Ryan interacts with his athletes. I need to watch how he talks to his staff. I need to watch how he operates as a man and as a father. Because when you're around high-level people, if you're just looking at, how many wrestling matches they win or how many athletes they sign or whatever, then you're missing really the big picture of it. Yeah. And that's why, once you kind of started trusting me with the team, and I tell people this all the time, the most impactful thing for me was getting to sit in on the coaches meeting every week. And I would come to the meeting. They were on Mondays or Tuesdays, and you would always do the strength conditioning stuff first, and it would take maybe 10 minutes. And you'd always look at me and say, Dustin, you can leave now if you need to. And I would always stay, for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, because I just wanted to hear the way you would, you would talk through problems with the staff. You guys would come to solutions for whatever it was. The way that you would make sure everyone felt like their input was important. Those are some of the things I learned. And I learned so much just from sitting in those meetings. So I think even though like my association with Ohio State and being a coach down there and helping those athletes was huge for me, but I think just for my personal development, getting to be around you and, you know, Thatcher and these other high level coaches and learning from you guys, just the way that you guys operate, that was the most impactful part, you know, for me.
Yeah, well, thanks. And it's funny you bring this up because we meet every Tuesday as a team. We use a leadership guy by the name of Chet Scott, who I met, years ago. He's helped me quite a bit personally. He's helped me with my team. He's helped me a number of different ways. But yesterday the conversation was the challenges that we have as young people or not, right? Some business leaders, owners, wildly successful, more money they can ever want. And the pull that we have in general to be pleasers, right? To be pleasers, to fit in, to grow our base in ways that isn't as lasting as building yourself into
a better human.
A better human, right? Like mass attracts mass. If you want more followers, be a more significant, stronger man, and people will follow, right? Instead of doing it the alternative way, is just build yourself up and continually self-assess and continually grow and continually make yourself into someone that real people want to be around, right? So that was a lot of our conversation yesterday after practice, and it was very unique. Just a good learning for people that are 18 to 21 that are growing, hopefully they're in the NIL space and trying to get more followers and just be real, like know who you are and just be real and watch what happens.
And I think that's such a simple lesson, but I think it's the hardest thing sometimes for people to do is just to be themselves.
Sure.
It's what I tell all my, even like my high school athletes that are, now some of them are getting recruited or they're going on visits or whatever. And I say, when you get to meet the coach, be yourself.
Yeah.
I said, don't try to be what you think they're expecting.
So powerful.
Simple,
so powerful.
It's so simple, but it's hard for people. I think even harder now for young people to do it because a lot of them are in the spotlight very early. In the expectations of, like you said, the follower count and, well, did anyone like this picture? Did they comment on my video? I mean, these things are important, but they're not,
right.
And they're really not important if you're not being yourself, So I think it's such a powerful lesson for young people. Just, work on being the best version of you, and then be that person. Don't try to be someone else.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's we see it, we hear about it, right? Just the mental state of people in general, right? The struggle, right? The mental illness struggle. We have more clinical psychiatrists and psychologists on staff now than ever before. It's just struggle. And it's the pleasing. It's constantly trying to please the outside rather than really find out who you are and be that strong person. So I think that's something that, is just needed, so.
Still thinking back to, kind of the early days down there at the RTC, and this was already a belief that I really had about myself. But then, watching you really reinforced it. I always thought, I have to make sure that I'm in the trenches with my athletes. I have to train with them. I have to suffer alongside them. I need them to feel that I have the same commitment to what we're doing as them, even though, I don't have to go out there and compete, but I still have to make sure that they see that I'm willing to put myself on the line every day. And that was one of the things I noticed about you right away. You're on the mat with these guys every day. If it's a bike workout, you're on the bike with them. You and I started training together and lifting together here and there. And it kind of became one of those things like who was willing to suffer more. And to this day, you're one of the only guys that's ever broke me on a bike workout.
I didn't break you.
No. So I remember this one, right? It was when we first got the SciFit bikes down there.
Yeah.
And I think it was me, you, Nate, Colin, a couple other guys. And we're doing like a 2x20. And all right, hey, we're supposed to just stay at a certain heart rate on the first 20.
Yeah.
And second 20, you're like, all right, I think maybe Nate was like, let's turn it up a little bit.
Sure.
So then you know how that goes. So we're at like 200 watts.
Right.
And then like, we got 10 minutes left and you're like, all right, 220. I'm like, all right, 230, 240, 250. And I kept trying to one up you and we got to where there's maybe 3 minutes left. And I'm like, all right, 300. You were like 340, 350, 360. You just kept turning it up and I broke.
Yeah, well, maybe my bike was a little less. I don't know. Yeah, I love biking. I think biking is good. I think suffering is really important. I think, as you do, example's our greatest teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And you want your team to realize that I'm not far removed from the need to have discomfort. I think the world says find the comfortable place and stay there, and we say that's good, but make sure you make time for the uncomfortable place, because that's when we grow, right? That's when we learn, and that's when we realize that there's a limit.
Yeah.
There's a limit to our being, and I think suffering teaches us that. It teaches us so much. And I talk a lot about chosen and unchosen suffering. Wrote a book on it, and suffering has taught me so much, chosen and unchosen. Right?
You learn
we
more.
chose.
You learn more about yourself.
Far more.
Yes.
Far more. Yeah. I don't learn so much about myself, and I guess you can though, right? And when things are really good and easy, you learn how at times, right? We talked this morning that you've almost got to, make sure that you stay hungry in the midst of things going really well, desperate, tranquil but desperate. There's a desperate. I talk about the church this weekend was about having this desperate love for God, like it's almost a desperate need for Him, regardless of how well things are going. And I think that's important. That
well, and that's hard when things are going well.
it's very hard.
It's like I told you. I mean, there's many days I wake up and I just want to go sit in my backyard and drink coffee. I don't want to go anywhere.
Sure.
I don't want to write an ebook today.
It's very real.
Yeah,
very real. I think that's human nature, right? Which is why it's so hard to go back to back, right? Back to back to back, and back to back to back to back. Right? So, and I know we talked about this a little earlier off mic, but the I believes are so important to me that people. We write down, when I make my team write down their I ams, their I love tos, and their I believes. And
what's the first one? I am
a father.
Okay.
Right. I'm a leader. I'm a strength coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a business person. The son of a loving God. Like whatever the I ams are, and then the I love tos. Because I think in life, this is life. It is easy to get caught up in the need tos, right? And you can't ignore the need tos, right? The things we need to do. But what brings a greater sense of just our experience as humans is to know what you love to do and make sure you make time for those things, right? Otherwise, it's just a monotonous day of, I need to do this, I need to do that. Like, what do you deeply love to do? And make sure, now, we're really fortunate because every day is an I love to. You love to lift weights. You love to suffer. You love to sauna. But really writing these things out, and then the I believes,
Mm-hmm.
The I believes are so critically important, I think, in our lives,
Well, I think the more, obviously it's easy to look at like you and I and say, okay, well, these guys get to do what they love for a living.
Sure.
But there's more that I love than besides weightlifting. I love to make my kids breakfast. So I made sure I made time for it today,
I love that.
I could have, there's always more work that I could have done.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure I had time to make them pancakes in the morning. It taps into like something primal, I think, providing food for my kids, So I think that anytime you
it's a belief system too. If I followed you around, no matter who I follow around on this planet, if I spent a month just filming you, at the end of the month, we could look at that film and say, this is his belief system. So you believe parenting is critically important.
It's the number one priority.
Because the fact that you simply love to make them breakfast is, I want to provide for them. And being a father is an incredible value to you. So it's a belief system, right? Your actions are the end result of whether it's written, stated or unstated, whether it's brought to the conscious or it's in your subconscious. The reality is, by telling me you love making eggs, I say, this guy loves being a father, right? So, and people need to, I think it's just important to connect to that, and self-assess and reflect and say, well, here's what I'm doing. Whatever my actions are, right, are the back end of my belief system.
Right.
Right.
It becomes difficult though, because what happens when sometimes you have to make a choice. And I'll give you a good example. Last week, something else is very important to me. I come to the coaches clinic every year.
Sure.
Watch the wrestle offs with the team, and I still, have a good connection with some of the athletes and things like that. And just to be down there, to help promote my business. I'm down there promoting Max Effort Muscle. And I love being, around the team and around the program. But I'm there and I thought, their trick or treat is every Thursday before Halloween. It's always that night.
Right.
I always miss it.
Right.
And so I'm down there, I'm watching the wrestle offs, and my wife sends pictures of my kids in the little village of Granville here trick or treating. They're 10 and they're 12. And I had this epiphany. I said, they're not going to do this very many more years.
Sure.
Next year could be the last one. But I told myself, I said, you know what? Next year, if I have to miss the wrestle offs in the coach's clinic, even though it's an event that I value every year, I might have to miss it for a year. Because then when they're 16, I can go back to it.
Sure.
So next year, if I'm not at the coach's clinic, that's
I don't know
why.
Right.
But it's always that Thursday. It's bad timing.
Right.
But no, it becomes tough because we value things, and it's that paradox of you have to work hard to achieve these things, so then you can provide for your family, but that also takes away from your time with the family.
Sure. And look,
so the more you can wind them together, the better.
Right. And I think, the reality is that you were at the coach's clinic or whatnot, but in general, I think what we try to get at with our guys, we try to get them to understand, and they're young, and when I was 18, I thought I had everything figured out, right? But there's if there's a gap, right? The gap between what you believe and what you're doing, it's right? Basically, ultimately, it's an integrity gap. And what we try to do is just communicate with our guys and say, here's what you say, and here's what you're doing. How can we help you? We love you. We love you. How can we help you close that gap? What things can we do to help you? And what things can you be doing to close the gap? And
action alignment.
Action alignment. Yeah, action alignment. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I talk about it with my high school kids all the time. They all want to be state champs. They all want to wrestle in college. And I tell them all the time, I've seen how state champs work.
Sure.
I've seen kids that wrestle in the Big Ten. What you're showing me is not what those kids do.
Right.
You're not showing me what Nathan Tomasello or Logan Stever did in high school. You're just not. So it's either it's a pipe dream or it's a real goal. You know, and I think even just outside of athletics, talk to kids on the team. How many of them want to have a beautiful home and a beautiful wife and a family? Like, well, are you really aligning your actions towards that? You either are or you aren't. All these little things add up.
Well, what you're doing too is to me is like the second of three pillars in leadership, and that's sharing truth and love. Right? You're sharing. I mean, when someone shares truth in love with us, it's extremely powerful. But you can feel it. Like, this person, I know this person loves me, and they're sharing this in a way that one, I feel their love, and it's beneficial for me. And it's critically important that leaders do that. Like you're a truth teller in a lot of people's lives. And, and having a truth teller that does it, again, in a way where there's love, it's a lot more digestible and there's truth not out of love.
Right.
Right. And you can feel that. It's like you're belittling me. You're just trying to, and typically, our ego, we start to fight back on that. But if we really know someone,
people don't like criticism.
Right.
Even if it's accurate.
Right.
But criticism can come from a place of love.
Deep love. And it's a lot more easily digested. And then the third pillar, obviously example is the key, and then truth and love. And then of course the third is embracing pain and suffering, right? Embracing the tough stuff. That's what leaders do.
The suffering aspect, I mean, and I don't know how or when this started, but I just really came to love and enjoy the feeling. It's almost meditative for me, the suffering that I feel in the gym. Someone asked me the other day, I just ran the marathon, the Columbus Marathon a few weeks ago.
Congrats on that.
Thanks. And I do want to talk marathon with you here in a second. But they asked me, they said, well, what, do you listen to music? I'm like, no, I don't listen to music. They're like, oh, so you ran 26 miles with no music? I'm like, yeah, it was never even a thought to take music. They're like, well, what do you think about? And I said, well, I think about everything. Well, like, what do you mean? I'm like, I think about kind of everything and then nothing all at the same time. Right. I feel like there's almost when you especially when you have this intense, prolonged, suffering and training, there's a meditative quality to it. You get to really feel. It's the time. Like I said, I think about everything but nothing at the same time. My mind's perfectly clear, and I think I see my life with a lot of clarity when I'm in those situations. And I think that's maybe part of what I crave about that suffering is just that feeling of just total clarity. Yeah,
a lot of the great coaches I've studied or been around, they almost force quiet time because the world doesn't want us to have quiet time, right? I mean, the world wants us to be distracted. and not be able to think and plan and reflect. And, running gives you that space. So yeah, it makes sense to me.
Now, so
It's logical.
You ran a marathon
Yeah. Well,
way back, right?
a couple years ago. Yeah, it was Sponseller, whatever his senior year was. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it was right before I started down there.
4 years ago, maybe. I don't know. 5 years ago, was it? Could it have been that long?
Who's Sponseller?
It was
He
his senior year.
He was gone before I was there.
Colt Sponseller. So it had to be.
It'd been like 12
Maybe it was a year.
12 years ago, 13.
What?
Yeah,
Come
you
on.
believe that?
It can't be 12 years ago. Wow, that's scary.
So I
What?
started the RTC in 2012. Sponseller was already long gone.
No, was he?
Yeah, he was.
No.
Yes, I promise you.
Really? Was he
Yeah.
one of my first? He was one of my first recruits.
So he might have
Wow.
graduated in 11, maybe the year before I got there.
Well, maybe it was. I don't know. I got to look up and see when I ran that marathon.
Yeah,
Wow, could that have been 10 years ago?
over 10.
It feels. I'll tell you what. It feels like yesterday.
I love that you said 3 or 4 years ago.
Wow, that's kind of you kind of mind blowing me right here.
Yeah. I mean, you were probably
yeah, but we were together.
You were probably younger than me.
I was. I just ran. I know I ran the Cap City. I won my age group. I'm trying to think of what the age group was. I think I ran a 125 half, Cap City half, and then the next year
That's moving.
I think
125 is moving.
I think I have skinny. I liked running. All my best friends in high school were runners.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple that were wrestlers, but a lot of them were runners. So I love running. I completely connect running to your mind more than your, right? Running's about your mind more than anything else, right? But yeah, the marathon was a. I think every human being should be forced to run a marathon. I think we could solve a lot of this world's problems if we made physical education classes ungodly hard, and we made them mandatory, and there's no online classes, and you brought back fitness tests. And I think people learning about who they are physically is critically important to overall well-being.
Yeah, I mean, there's no hiding in a 4-hour workout.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, when I was a kid, they had the 2-mile run, and you had this fitness competition. It was nationals, a national competition.
Every school did it.
Every
right?
school did it. You had to wait for it. You do so many pull-ups, so many push-ups, and you had to run, at a certain time. And the better you did, you got more points. And if you hit a certain mark, I remember we all went to Madison Square Garden. I grew up in New York, on Long Island, and we all the best scorers in the school. We went to see the Harlem Globetrotters. That was the gift. They took all the most fit kids to watch the Harlem Globetrotters, but we need more of that, right? So anyway, the marathon was a great experience for 19 miles. I loved it. Every step of it was great until I know you said you started to feel your bicep.
Yeah.
I felt the contraction in my left thigh at about 19, and I thought I was going to break 3 hours. Like my goal was based on the half marathon. You didn't even do I did a marathon. A pre-marathon training.
No, I just kind
plan.
of jumped in a couple
Just
weeks
jumped
before.
in, right? That's crazy.
But so you were on pace to break 3 hours.
Well, yeah, that was my goal.
Which is moving.
Based on the half marathon, a 3:10 was my time.
Okay.
If I just would have stuck with
Which would qualify you for Boston.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, that was so. But I really thought we could break 3 because it was the perfect morning, the perfect weather. So anyone that wants to run a marathon, listen to this, because I did everything wrong. Right. So I went out with Colt. Colt and I ran together, and we had the Garmin, so we knew our time, and we're going to break 3. We're going to break 3. He's like, Coach, we're going out fast because based on my half marathon time, I should have been around a 3:10, but we were like 2:56. I'm like, Colt, I feel incredible. Be quiet. Shut up and keep running and stop saying that. We're going to do sub 3. So at about 16 miles, I'm like, man, I'm starting to feel it a little bit. But again, the weather was perfect in the morning, and you have this sense of your brain plays tricks on you where it was like, I feel great right now. I might not feel great later, so I'm going to use it now,
right.
and I'll get through. And then the wall is another, like the wall to me is like, walls are made to be knocked down, right? I mean, that's how we think. But
you think all right, I'm so tough. When it becomes hard, I'll be able to push through it.
This is
but
not,
physiology comes into play at some point.
Yes, and it should be called like a 400-foot thick cement, wall. It's not a paper mache wall. It's not drywall.
No.
So when I hit it, I was on the ground at the 19. Colt was like, "You okay?" Listen, I said, "Colt, go ahead."
Did he
I'm
break
starting
3?
to cramp. He did 3:04.
3:04. That's an amazing time.
I think I did 3:37. I fell 3 minutes back from him in 5 miles. At 19, yeah, I was on the ground, actually on the ground. Everything was cramped. People running over to me. And you know, the thing that's worse too is all your friends are at the end of the race. They're not at the beginning of the race. So,
Yeah.
So they saw me walking across the finish line. But I made it, but it was a rough, but everyone should do one.
Yeah, so
and you just finished it a week or two ago, right?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago. Yeah, so Daniel Koch, who you know, you know, he helped me. You know, he's an elite triathlon guy. He helped me kind of plan for it. I reached out to him, I was like, hey, I'm jumping this marathon in 3 weeks. I need some tips. I need to know what to do. He kind of taught me how about pacing. He said, look, you're going to go out. He said, you're a good runner, but you're not accustomed to the volume. He said, so don't come out and run fast. Yep. He said, you're just going to have to swallow your ego, let all these people pass you. He's like, run like an 8:45 mile and just coast.
That's hilarious.
And that's what I did.
So smart.
And he said, because normally, he said, guys that are in good shape, but they're not properly prepared, they'll get to mile 20 and they just fall apart. And I saw it with my own eyes. You know, I get close to mile 20, and now guys that had passed me an hour before, they're walking. They're laying on the side of the ground. They're cramped up. And I'm just, I wasn't even breathing hard the whole time. But I had to be really careful. Yeah. That would have been you laying on the ground there.
Yeah, you stepped right over me. One of my best friends called me right after the race, guy Scott Arnell, big supporter when I was at Hofstra, and said, hey, I want to congratulate you on the race. I noticed that 10,000 people passed you in the last in the last 5 miles.
Something similar happened to a guy that I know. He had reached out to me. I knew him from when he used to work at Muscle and Strength. We'd done some stuff with him back in the day. And he's an Ohio guy. And he said, hey, I saw you run the marathon. He said, I'm running as well. Would you like to run with me? I said, well, what's your pace? He said, well, I'm projected to, I'm going to pace for a 3:15. I said, well, that's too fast for me. I'm sorry, I can't run with you.
Yeah.
Well, then I saw, a couple days later after the marathon, I saw him post his time like on his story or whatever. And, I finished in like 3:54. He finished at like 3:49. He was only 5 minutes in front of me. And I thought, what happened to this guy? Right. So I dug a little deeper and I found his paces. His miles were like 7:05, 7:10, 7:5, 7:10. And then you could just see around like mile 16, 17, 18. All of a sudden they were in the 8 minutes. Then they were the 9s. And then they were 15-minute miles. And the same thing happened. I reached out and said, hey, man, like, I'm glad that you finished, but, it sounds
what
like
happened?
He said he locked up and there was nothing he could do.
Yeah,
he said he had a perfect training, cycle for it and everything, and was on pace, felt great, but he hit that wall and he was over. And this is an experienced marathon guy. Yeah, it wasn't his first time, Yeah,
but I did when I did the Pelotonia too, the first 112, and I had the same experience. Nutrition is so critically important. So key. Throughout, when you're doing something that long, making sure you're drinking and eating, and so that's a big piece of it, right?
Oh yeah, I carried a little fanny pack, and I had like the salt tablets like that we took in the sauna today. Sure. I was taking 2 of those every 3 miles. Wow. I was taking gummies every other mile. He said you have to have a schedule and you have to stick to it. Sure. He said it doesn't matter if you feel good, because you won't feel good at some point. Yeah,
that's good. That doesn't surprise me that you did that. Yeah.
I get it. That's what gave me a shot, I think.
Yeah. Well done. It's off the bucket list.
It's off the list. I don't know if I'll ever do another one.
Yeah.
I might do like a trail marathon, just for the enjoyment of it. They have one up in Mohican, but I'm not going to worry about my pace or my time.
I like biking. I think biking for me is just, I love running it. Always ran, but you get to a point where your knees start to feel it, and biking is just such less impact. And you can experience biking one, if you're outside, you can see more because you go further, but indoor, you can get a really uncomfortable feeling with low impact.
Yeah, the recovery is a lot easier on your body.
Yeah.
If you get that same feeling from a run, like so for example, last week, coach's clinic, that Friday I came down and hooked up with my guy Clay. They call him GUTCHECK Jr.
Clay's the man.
Clay's the man. We went and ran the stadium together.
I saw that.
And we didn't run any races, because he's just coming off a knee injury. He's feeling better now. And, I'm just coming off that marathon. So let's just run, 12 C decks, get it, it was a great morning. It was an incredible workout, but my calves were wrecked the next day. Yeah. Like I couldn't even straighten my feet out.
Yeah, so you guys were you were on C deck. You were on the upper deck. Yeah, that's
it's one of my favorite places to run.
It is a great place to run, and it's hard on the calves.
Yeah.
It's hard on everything, but it's good.
So do you do any running anymore, like with the team? Or you do the biking with them?
Bike. I just bike. I wanna do a 5K. I mean, the distance isn't, that's not going to be the problem. The problem is I had knee surgery. So a little bone on bone. So biking is just, the least traumatic, but I think running is critical. Yeah.
And you still doing lifting or no?
Yeah, I lift. I like ropes, pull-ups. I'm into yoga a little bit now.
Yeah.
I started doing yoga. So
I love yoga. I love the way it makes me feel, but I don't do it consistently.
Yeah, hot yoga. I started Tuesday, Thursday. This place Rewild right in town I'm taking my team today, actually, on a recovery day. It's just really good. Good flexibility stretching. Most guys, we want to pump up and then not really stretch and lengthen the muscles, and I think this is going to be good for them. A lot of guys have been going on their own, but today we'll go as a team.
Yeah, so there was a summer, it might have been the last summer that Reese was here.
Mm-hmm.
Humphrey was here training at the RTC, or maybe it was the year before. He made the world team that last year, and to help him bring his weight down, we started doing hot yoga every week. Well, the first time that we did it, we went there and we were a little bit early, and we said, all right, we're going to go for a run. And it's middle of summer, it's August, it's 90 degrees out. And we told the lady, I said, well, we're going to go for a run first to get a sweat going. And she said, well, you might not want to do that. We said, we'll be fine. And so we probably ran 3 miles and ran hard, got a really good sweat. And then we go back and the class starts. 5 or 10 minutes into it, I'm hurting. And I look over at him and Reese is looking at me like, what did we get ourselves into?
That's funny.
My hamstrings have never been so sore because we ran, we kind of dehydrated ourselves, not knowing. We didn't really know what we were getting into.
Yeah, well, they bake your core. They make you sweat by doing some things that heat you up from the inside.
Yes.
And then they just keep it going for an hour.
It's a long time.
It's a long time to have. So your core was elevated when you walked in. So
the core temperature was already up.
Yeah, that's challenging, but it's good. It's good, and I think our team's gonna really like it today.
Yeah, so Julie's been doing some yoga in the barrel sauna when she does it by herself out there. Now she'll do it. She doesn't like quite as hot as we were doing today. We had a 220, 230 or whatever. She likes it 160, 180. But she'll do yoga in there by herself. I always got people with me, so I never do it. It's kind of sitting there and talk or whatever. But I would like to get back into some hot yoga.
Let me know when you want to come.
Yeah, well, I can't today. Maybe next week.
You
guys always do it on Wednesdays?
You're swamped. Typically, I go Tuesday, Thursday, 6:30 in the morning are my days. But it'll vary week to week with the team. First, I want to make sure that they really enjoy it. So today's the first day. Again, several are going on their own and love it. But we'll just add it into the training, probably a day after competition thing, a kind of a recovery day. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So
all right. I'll tell you what, kind of moving on, I want to talk about some of, maybe some of the lessons that I was able to learn from you, either directly or just kind of indirectly by watching you, at OSU all those years that I was down there. And, this is one of the things I talk about we have a coaching podcast too called the Coaches Clinic, but it's one of the things I talk on there, all the time about coaching. One of the most important things I learned, whether you're talking about your business, talking about, coaching as a team, because everything involves coaching, right? If you're a leader, at home, you're coaching your children,
Sure.
It's all coaching. And I can remember you talking in the one of the meetings, you said, hey, listen, we can disagree in here, but there has to be one voice when we come outside of here. We can't have, this coach says this coach says that, we have to be united. I tell Julia this all the time. I said, we have to be united as parents,
Sure.
To the kids, there has to be one voice. Where is that just something you think you kind of instinctually learned as a coach, or was there a coach that kind of taught you that?
I think there's quite a few things that I think I learned under Coach Gable at Iowa. And I don't know what his meetings were like because I was never privy to them. But I know that staff, they were all in unison. There was no, one guy's talking and the other guy's not listening, or one Coach Gable's talking and the other coach is rolling his eyes, or there was none from a body mannerism standpoint and from what they spoke and how they said it, they were clearly very much in unison. And, look, when you have 5 different men that have all been really successful in the sport, you're going to get varying opinions. But we go old school. We hash it out. We argue it out, whether it's who you're going to recruit or what's going to happen with training today. And even before that, I hire people that I deeply trust. I coach these guys, but I know I trust them. And I think, the most powerful thing that a leader can give to someone is belief in them. That, listen, when you're speaking, I'm going to listen to you. I believe you. And so we'll hash it out, and then we just kind of go like this. If we're going to go after this guy, is everyone we're going to vote? Should we offer him or not? On the count of 3, because what I don't want is to be the leader that I squash all the voices of the brilliant minds around me, and that's a pride ego problem.
Because then you have a bunch of followers in the room with you, not leaders.
You have followers with no voice, and they will leave. A real man, right, ultimately man or woman, right? They want to be heard, right? So I know things that would make me go someplace else, right? Having no impact because my voice and my ideas aren't heard is not healthy. So I make sure that my coaches have areas of the program that they're completely in charge of, and then areas where we all have to agree on, we're going to move forward. So we just thumb up on the count of 3. My thumb goes up or down at the same time, so they're not impacted at all by my thinking. They're
not thinking, what does Tom want to see here?
What does Tom want to see here? Listen, we're all together, so it neutralizes some of the stress of if I keep voting against him. No, you vote against me every single time you think you should. What you said earlier about knowing who you are. Like, vote the way you think is the way that you should vote, not the way I want you to vote. I don't want people around me that vote the way I want to vote. That's why I hired you. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And whatever the score is, that's the way it goes. If I get outvoted once or twice, I've not consulted on something that I'm just so sure of.
Because there has to be some times.
There are times when, listen, my instinct is this is good for us, and I'm going to go with my instinct, right? But on areas where, it's important to help them grow and make sure that our program's the best, yeah, I consult with them frequently. And then again, if I voted down and they voted up 2 years from now, when the young man may not have made it, or the scenario, I don't go, I voted down. I told you. No.
Well, because once they're there, regardless of how you voted, it's your job to make sure that this kid pans out.
Based on our staff, the best decision was this, and I believe that this was the best decision, even though, listen, and sometimes, right, it's like he's voting yes, 40% thinks, maybe, but it was enough for him to get the thumb up. So I think it's just really important that on that day, in that moment, with the information we had, it was the best decision, and there's no looking back. So yeah, and then there are times when it doesn't. We don't second guess, but what can we learn from that? What did we miss? What did we miss here? Was there something that we missed in this decision that we can do better next time? But yeah,
I think it's hard too, because you have to own it. Not just when it goes well, but when it goes bad.
Right. I mean, yeah.
You have to say, all right, well, this is what we thought was going to be best. And, if he didn't work out or this decision didn't work out, you can't then deflect it and say, well, Ralph said
exactly.
This, and I.
No, we as a group, because for every time you go this and it doesn't work out, or it does work out, there are some of these when it didn't, right? So the bottom line is, yeah, you got to be unified, man. Your people will clearly. They will, you said, even at home. I mean, and it happens. Hey, my daughter learned that I'm a little softer than my wife when it comes on this, right? People are brilliant. They'll find the weakest link.
Yeah.
And they will completely pursue that link to no end.
I want my kids to go to bed early. My wife, it's not a big deal to her because she stays up later.
Sure.
So what do? They manipulate her into getting to stay up early.
That's right.
And I just told her today because they almost missed the bus. Missed the bus this morning.
Right.
I'm making them pancakes and they're falling asleep at the table.
Right.
They were running out there. The bus driver's waiting on them. She walks back in. She says, "Oh, the bus driver probably hates us." I said, "Julie," we talk about this every week. The kids need to go to bed earlier.
Right.
They're dragging. They can barely get out of bed. I said, but I can't just be the one saying it.
Right.
It has to be you too.
Yeah.
Because they won't listen to just me. They can tell we're divided on this issue.
Sure.
Even though it's a seemingly inconsequential thing.
It's so funny, but true. Yeah. And that's what it is, in
she
everything.
And she said, well, next week's, daylight savings time, maybe then. I said, all right, it's always, then it'll be maybe after Christmas break, but,
Yeah.
So that's one of the very few places that my wife and I are not aligned on. But just about everything else, we're in sync.
Sure. And I was a little weaker than, even if Lynn and I were aligned initially. For me, I'm really good. I tell parents, I'm really good at causing someone else's kids to suffer. But it's very hard for a parent, and we know how critically important this is. We talked about this earlier too.
Yeah.
I had an amazing childhood. I mean, we had a picnic table as a dinner table. We never went on vacation. Never is a strong word.
Right.
We never ate out. Never. Right. Every single night, there were 7 of us. My mom cooked dinner. Now, growing up, I never thought there was something that I needed and I didn't have. I had everything that I needed. I had an incredible group of people around me that loved me. I had people that believed in me. I had amazing trust. Mom always told me the truth. Mom never got involved in my affairs, ever. If I got cut from the basketball team, I talked to the coach. Mom never talked to the coach. She was too busy cooking and trying to make money to put food on the table, to be involved in my affairs. Yeah, I'm sorry to make the team. It's the way it goes, you know. So that the capacity to allow our children to struggle, it's just the way it was for us. And now that things are better for us, it's hard to cause them to go through what we went through naturally because that's the way it was.
Right.
Now you've got to fabricate it. I can make it easier. My parents could have made it easier for me.
They were just trying to make it as best as they could for you.
Yeah,
That's what you had.
I had everything I needed, but they couldn't manifest that in a fake way. It was just the way it was. The way it is the way it is. So now that you have more and we have more of our wants, it's not. So I wasn't very good at that, quite frankly. I had more, which is nice. I had more than materialistically. I could provide my children more than my parents could. And now I want them to choose to struggle, and it's hard.
It is tough, and it's something I deal with a lot because I think, and again, I had everything I needed growing up.
Sure.
But a humble upbringing is how I look at it.
Yeah.
And my kids, I mean, they have, material from a material standpoint, way more than I ever had. I mean, I had all the love I needed, and I give them all the love that they need. But from a material standpoint, they have more than I could have ever dreamed of. So how do I get them to choose to work hard and to suffer when they don't really have to? And this is a talk I have with my wife all the time. She grew up very similar to me. Her dad was a steel worker like mine, and we grew up in the same little town. Mm-hmm. And I say it's okay for our children to be bored. I was bored all the time. Half my childhood was being bored and wanting to be somewhere else than where I was at. Sure. They don't have to be pleased every minute of the day. They're kids. Mm-hmm. It's okay for them not to have a 4K screen to look at and do these other things. I said they'll grow up just fine. But so I try to do little things to help them kind of learn, that they don't. There's not just some like endless bank account that orders them whatever they want on Amazon. Yeah. That if they want something, I say, okay, well you can come in the gym or you can come in and pack sacks for max effort. I'll pay you $10 an hour. You come and you can pack orders, and maybe they'll do it for an hour, maybe they'll do it for 2, and after 2 they feel like they worked an 8-hour day. And it's such an easy thing. All they're doing is putting orders in the box or whatever. But it's something that I think about all the time, and I think my daughter doesn't like to work out anymore because dad's I'm a big loser type of thing. She's 12, so what do you expect? But my son, I feel like at least, even though he has been very lucky from a material standpoint, the things that we're able to provide, I have been able to teach him through the weight room to understand how to work hard. So now when we do things at home, like if I'm stacking firewood, I say, Jack, I need you out here to help me stack firewood. He doesn't say, well, how much are you going to pay me? Or, well, I don't want to do it now. He puts on his shoes and he comes out. Yeah. Or, when I'm building those retaining walls this summer, I said, hey, I need you to shovel gravel. Now I probably could have shoveled it faster than him while I'm doing the walls or whatever. But, he came out and he, shoveled gravel, what I have him do it for a couple hours at a time. But it's funny though, because then I heard him telling someone, he said, yeah, I'm the one that shoveled all the gravel for the walls. I mean, we had 4 tons of gravel. He shoveled. He did his share, but he didn't do all of it.
I'm sure it gives him a sense of pride, right? Look, he can see the backyard. The backyard's beautiful, and hey, at the end of it, I have a stake in this.
I think so.
Right?
Yeah, I think even at a young age, kids can understand that, right?
I mean, I think connecting the work-reward relationship is so critically important, right? Yeah. And I was fortunate to do that in a way that. I was pursuing what I deeply loved and learned that, right? It's not always the case, but I think the older I've gotten and the longer I live, the more I realize that finding what we deeply love, right? What we deeply love to do, and that isn't always thrown in our face early on, but I haven't been around anybody that's really good at what they do, like really elite, and doesn't love what they're doing. Like when I reflect on every person, I don't care what field it is. My brother's one of the top attorneys in the world. I mean, he's the head of one of the largest IP firms. He loves law. He loves what he's doing.
How could he be elite if he didn't love it?
That's right.
He could not.
Because you've got to, we know that you've heard the 10,000 hour rule and, in order to be a master. But the reality is, how are you ever going to get to 10,000 hours of something that you didn't enjoy doing? The greatest guitar players, they love the way the string feels on their fingers. They love the way the guitar feels. They just love it. The greatest builders I'm around, this guy Mike Maturka is an amazing builder in town. He literally loves the smell of dirt. You know what I'm saying? Like he just loves everything about his craft. I see you in the weight room. You just because euphoric in the weight room. And the challenge for people is, well, I don't know what that is for me yet. Listen, live inside some boundaries of doing the right thing. Live a good life. Surround yourself with the right people. You will come across it. And then until you find it, make sure that you're in a position in your life that when you do find it, you can really pursue it. So, look, my son was really good at wrestling. Jake was my second son. My oldest son had to stop wrestling because we thought he had a heart condition. He wrestled also. Jake was a way better athlete than I am. I was psychotic over wrestling. I couldn't watch enough of it. I would hang over the rafter. He really, really liked it. And he was good at it. He could have been way better than me in it. But he got an injury, and then that softened his really, really like for it. He fell in love with video, and he fell in love with business. He's amazing at it.
It's incredible.
He's so much. I can't even fathom his knowledge that he's gained over, since his senior year in college. How much he's learned, and I'm sitting in meetings with him. I'm like, you're talking another language, but you fell in love with this, and I love that.
Well, think how much better served he is now long term than if he would have kept and even continued to grow that love for wrestling.
Sure.
But instead it's transferred into something else.
Yeah.
I think you could kind of see that. His last year, he was so interested in the video, the social media marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing to watch what he's done with it. But
yeah,
imagine if he'd have stayed like tunnel vision on wrestling.
Sure.
Yeah, he still would have been a great wrestler, but he wouldn't be doing what he is now.
He wouldn't be doing now. And it's like, as leaders and as parents and, often, we try to fit people into this box that we want them. And it's like, a lot of times that's really good advice, right? But we also have to be prepared for when their love starts to wane, or their really like for starts to wane. And well, then how are you going to spend your time? If you're not doing this, you're not going to spend the time sitting around. Like what is the thing that really wakes you up early and keeps you up late, right? Because ultimately those are the things that we want in our lives, right? So I'm really fortunate that, fortunate or not, bottom line is people I'm around that are great at what they do, love it deeply.
Let's talk about Ohio State wrestling for a minute.
Sweet.
You just brought in, the top overall class, brought in some amazing athletes. So talk a little bit about this crop you brought in.
People make all the difference, right? People are the greatest commodity on the planet, right? The people you surround yourself with and the people in the organization. You can have the greatest plan with people that don't believe in what you're doing is far less effective, right? Than an average plan with amazing people. So we brought in the number one class in the country. We needed to. We walked through this really tough time as a sport when COVID hit, right? Of course, as a country, and lots of people suffered through this. But, we lost. We were 6 days away from the national tournament. Colin Moore was ranked number one. And probably of all the weight classes, he had the biggest differential between him and his competition.
Absolutely.
Right? Things had to fall apart for him to not win. Luke Pletcher was he had a tight one with Nick Lee, but he was the reigning Big Ten champ. Sammy Sasso was in a great spot that year. His body size was perfect at 49. Even though he's gotten older and better at wrestling, 49, he's become more of a challenge for him than it was. So the weight cut's more difficult. So we lost that year, and we needed a big recruiting class, and we signed some really, what you study and you think these are the traits of elite people. I believe that what I'm seeing falls in line with all the traits that develop. And we got a great class. And now, since June, they've been here. So we're July, August, September, October. We're 4 or 5 months in, and we're really excited about what we're seeing.
You know, I talked to Kevin, the current strength coach
Sure.
down there, and he said something to me, and it reminded me of the same type of things people were saying when that class came in, maybe the second or third year I was there, when we had, it was Logan,
Sure.
it was Bo, it was Nate, it was Kyle. We had this great group of individuals that came in that were very young and were leaders from day one. He said something, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he said there's just been a change top to bottom of everyone on the roster, the way they operate in the room, because of the way these freshmen that have come in, the way they operate,
Yeah, they
the way
lead
they
up.
practice.
They're
Yes.
leading up. We got a great group of seniors. I mean, Caleb Romero, tremendous leader. Ethan Smith they both came back. They didn't have to, right? Tate is a Malik. Hoffman's not a senior yet. He's got one more year after this, but we've got a great group of upperclassmen. But it's amazing how you can lead up. You come in as a freshman, and you're full of this fire. These guys have been at it for 5 or 6 years, beating each other up in the room. And you see this group of 6 or 7 or 8 young people come in, and they're so excited. And it's almost like, man, that was me.
It reignites it for everyone.
Just reignited everything, and it's amazing the difference that one can make. One person. We have 5, 6, 7, 8 freshmen in there right now that love it. They've got talent, but they have effort that's extraordinary, right? And in all the equations, in all the equations of being elite, effort counts twice, right? Effort is twice.
Well, I always say too, it's the one thing that you can control.
Right.
I can't help that I'm not talented,
Right.
but I can help how much effort I
Yes.
put in. And that's what I preach to all my kids. I say it's the one thing you're always going to have under your control. There is going to be differences, talent-wise, genetic-wise, and you're not going to be able to have experience-wise, all these other things. You're not going to have any control over that. But you're going to have control over your effort and your preparation.
Sure.
And the effort that you
Max
give when you're out
effort.
there. Max effort,
Always
exactly.
give max effort.
Nice little plug there. But so now you're blessed.
Yeah.
You got to,
Yeah.
you can definitely see early on, these are guys that are very
Yeah.
talented, but they also understand the effort that's required.
And the thing that's really nice right now for us is that I believe that typically, unless you're just a phenom, typically you need about 500 days of duress, of being put in under an amount of duress and stress and tension that you're not used to in order to really be ready. And we're fortunate that most of these freshmen, only one of this number one recruiting class in the country is in our starting lineup. The rest of them, I can redshirt them, which gives them from June of 21, really, until March of 23, which is when the national championships are, to be ready. That is, with their pedigree, what they've come in with, that amount of time should put them in a very good position to make the corrections, the little micro connections that they need to make in order to be successful at this level. So we're in a great spot. We've got them and didn't have to use all of them.
Yeah, you got time for them to develop.
Yes, let them marinate a little bit in what you need to marinate in. There's no faking it. There's no other way, right? There's no pod you can put somebody in and move them from one level to the next. It's called tension.
And it's time involved.
It's time involved. It's time under tension. It's struggle. And we've got enough good guys in there to cause the struggle that they're going to need caused on their life to really grow. So as long as they keep loving it, they'll keep coming back. And they do. So we're excited about this year. We start here pretty soon here. We start on the 11th from a home duel standpoint with Virginia Tech. They've got a very good team. Should be some great matchups there. And, of course, this weekend, Michigan State Open.
Is that this weekend already?
Yeah, this weekend.
Oh, my God. The season has just crept up.
Right, it's crept up. So, and it's nice. We're finally a full year of we can fully promote and, get the arena packed again. And, we're out of the COVID thing. And so, the fan base should be rocking in there.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm super excited for the season. Always pumped to see the guys, back in action. And it's been awesome watching the way the program has continued to evolve over the years. And it's really been a blessing for myself to be, involved with, even now, just kind of at afar, still getting to work with Colin and some of the guys.
Sure.
And, some of the guys that come out in the summertime or whatever. But I just want to thank you for coming out today, for us being able to sit down and talk. And, you really had a huge impact on everything I do, the way I operate, and the way I, kind of view myself, my life, and my, life as a coach. You've had a huge impact on that, Tom.
Well, I appreciate that. And Ohio State wrestling is better because you're involved. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. And I think that's it. Wrestling Strength Podcast. We're out.